Being exhausted is a great excuse to avoid a bunch of stuff. Hey BookTube, it's Kim at Middle of the Book March, and today's video is going to be a chatty one. Just something I thought I'd talk about. And if you've watched me for any length of time, you know that a lot of times my midweek videos are chatty or book topics that I've come up with, or things that have been on my mind, or things that strike me as, hey, I want to have a conversation about that. And this is the best place to do it. So what I've been thinking about is not the top 10, but 10 reasons why not to read. And what you say, what you're asking, what are you talking about? Why would you give reasons not to read? Well, I have some pretty good reasons here that I wrote down in my trusty little notebook. And I wanted to talk to you about them because they've become important to me. And I know that I've been feeling some strain here and there. And I know I'm not the only one. I'm not the only one who's crazy. So I wanted to talk to you about that. Let's get going. Again, it's not a top 10. I have a list of 10 things of reasons why not to read. And even though it's not a top 10, number 1 and number 10 are my bookends, and those are kind of the most important ones that I think are on this list. So number 1 reason why not to read is you're exhausted. It's as simple as that. I've had a rough year and a half. Things have been very hard, but they're on the upswing. You know, everybody's got things that they deal with that are hard, that are tiring, that are scary, that are depressing, that are stressful. And my last year has been filled with stuff like that. And I'm wiped out. I'm wiped out daily because I have a very stressful job now. I have a big commute. There's a lot going on. So there are days when I'm just wicked tired and I want to sit in front of the TV and watch YouTube videos, or I want to watch old movies with my daughter and I'm glazing over in front of the TV. And it's very difficult to pick up a book. But if I'm feeling that exhausted and that wiped out and mentally strained, there's no reason for me to make myself read, because I'm not going to retain anything. I'm not going to enjoy my time. So there's no benefit that comes out of making myself read through an exhaustion or through stress. What also happens to me is I listen to audiobooks in the car primarily. And when I'm driving home listening to an audiobook, if I'm still stressing about the day, or I'm still rolling over everything of my day, I lose a lot of the thought of the audiobook. And the same thing happens when I'm reading a book in print. I could read 2 pages and realize, I don't know what I just read. I didn't retain anything. And it's because I'm drained or exhausted or mentally strained, whatever it is. So I've given myself permission to not read during some of those hardest times. And it's okay to not read. I am the kind of person where if I don't read every day, I feel jittery. I don't like it. But there have been days and days where I didn't pick up a book and I was either too tired or too stressed to even care. But over time, I've given myself permission to not read, and it's okay. It slows my reading down, but we're going to talk about that. It's okay. And if you're like me, give yourself some grace and give yourself some patience. Be as good to yourself as you would be to your best friend. Number 2, kind of falls from number 1, but real life pressures. Along with being tired, there's just so many things going on in the world. There's so many things going on in my world. There's so many things going on in my family. There's so many things going on in my life. There's real life stuff happening. It could be really good stuff. It could be, my daughter had a baby 2 years ago. I don't know if I even read during that 2-week period when they had a newborn for 2 weeks at home. And it was a wonderful, wonderful period of time, but I didn't feel like reading. There are other times when, if my daughter was in the hospital, I didn't feel like reading. If I got a new job, I didn't feel like reading. There were weeks during my divorce, I didn't feel like reading. And there's real life stuff that happens. It could be anything. It could be good or bad. It could be getting ready for a wedding. It could be dealing with a loved one who's died. It could be a child graduating from school. It could be anything, good or bad. Life takes time. Life takes energy. And along with being wicked tired, give yourself some grace if there's a lot going on and you can't find the time or the place to read. It's okay. Number 3, keeping up with Goodreads goals. Oh, a couple of years ago, I stopped assigning myself a quantity goal on Goodreads. It's idiotic for me. It's idiotic for me because I will set a goal and I will instantly rebel against it. Or I will so overcompensate for a goal that it's unrealistic and I piss myself off because I don't meet the goal. So I stopped putting in a number of books I want to read in that year on Goodreads because it was stressing me out, man. It was stressing me out. And I'm thinking, why am I doing this to myself? And it's funny because a lot of the members of my in real life book group were like, hey, you don't have a Goodreads goal. And why did you take the number down? It's like, I don't want it anymore. I don't want to live up to a goal anymore. I don't want to live up to a quantity. The quantity was freaking me out, pissing me off, stressing me out. And I said, enough is enough. I don't care how much I read as far as quantity. All I care about is that I love my reading. And that's kind of what I went to. Remove the goal. It's self-imposed. It's ridiculous. It's stress-inducing. Enough is enough. Number 4, keeping up with other booktubers or other readers. When I first started watching BookTube, the majority of booktubers that I read were young adults. And hold on just a moment. My cat is getting sick and I don't want you to hear that. And I think he's done. That was gross. I think he threw up over there somewhere, which I will have to clean up later. So, what was I talking about? Keeping up with other booktubers. I started off watching young adult booktubers. And these people were talking about finishing 250, 300 books in a year. How in the frig does anybody read 250 to 300 books a year? And so I thought about that. First of all, many, many young adult books are very fast to read. They don't take a lot of energy, mental energy to read. A lot of the books that these booktubers were reading were young adult fantasy or actually teenager or middle grade level reading. If you're reading a lot of young adult fantasy, they go fast. So that's one way that they can read so many books in 1 year. The other reason is because many of them didn't hold full-time jobs. They didn't have a spouse. They didn't have a partner, and they didn't have children. So there's a reason why I can't read 300 books in 1 year. I'm okay with that because life is tough. Life is hard. Life is full. And why would I put myself up against somebody else's reading, somebody else's quantity? I don't know what their life is like. I know what my life is like, and there's no frickin' way I can read 300 books in a year. So for me to even try to keep up with the Joneses is impossible. And it's so defeatist because it brings you down. It's almost insulting when you hold yourself up to a standard that is impossible to meet. Don't do that to yourself. Don't do it. Keeping up with other booktubers, even when I have friends, booktuber friends, who are similar in life stage as me, but again, their lives are completely different from mine, and many of them read way more books than I do. And I am so happy for them, but our lives are very different. None of us know everything that happens in somebody else's life. If you're watching me for maybe 15 minutes to a half hour every week. It is such a minuscule amount of my life. You can't possibly know everything that's happening. So I can't look at another booktuber and know how many books they've read and try to match it. It's impossible. It's too much. Remove the standard. Number 5, everybody else is reading it. Why should I make myself read something just because everybody else is reading it? That's not a good enough reason to read. Don't. It's a good enough reason why not to read something. However, if I see a book that I'm marginally interested in, and all of a sudden it's everywhere and everybody's reading it, that might push me over the edge to pick it up. But I had to have had interest previous to everybody's spinning it or covering it or reviewing it. I'm not going to pick up a book just because everybody else is reading it. It's not a good enough reason to read. I have to have some interest. And there's a lot of peer pressure. Peer pressure is a bad reason to read. It's a good reason not to read. And peer pressure can happen without your peers actually pressuring you. It could be an assumed pressure or a perceived pressure. It's not a good enough reason to read. If everybody's reading a book and it's not even close to being the type of book that you think you would love, it's in a different genre that you hate, don't read it. It's a great reason not to read. Number 6, FOMO, fear of missing out. How many times have I picked up a book because I was afraid of missing out on the conversation? Or how many times have I taken part in an event because I was afraid of missing the inclusion to the event? And it failed miserably for me. So I now know, I now am better able to manage my time and ask myself, am I really going to be upset if I miss out on that book? Am I going to be upset if I miss out on that event or that group or that conversation? And I can look back in this past year and say, oh, you know what? That looked like it was fun. Or I wish I had known about that group in advance, so maybe I could have been involved. And then I think back again at myself and I ask myself, are you really that upset? And my answer is, not really. No, not really. So FOMO is, again, it's a perceived FOMO. It is self-induced. And I've come to know that about myself. And I've asked myself, think again. Number 7, a good reason not to read, the endless reading events. You don't have to participate in every single one. Oh, when you join BookTube, especially when you join BookTube as a creator, there are so many freaking amazing reading events throughout the year. October is Victober, a massive reading event. November is Nonfiction November, massive reading event. It is so tempting to desperately want to be a part of every event or to take part in an event and force a standard on yourself to read only that type of book all month. It can't work. It doesn't work for me. It doesn't work for me. Now I'm so much more realistic. I don't take part in events every month. I take part in the ones I love. And even the ones I love, I might be only reading one book for that particular event. That's great because I'm still taking part. Victober, I'm reading one book for Victober, and it's Vanity Fair by William Makepeace Thackeray. And it's a super long book, and I'm loving it, and it's awesome. And guess what I can do with the rest of my month? Read whatever the hell I want. I don't have to read all Victorian novels throughout October. I'm not going to do that. So I don't read for every reading event. I pick and choose the ones I love, the types of books I love, the groups that I love. If somebody shows a book that I've got on my shelf and I'm wicked interested, I will take part in that event, but I'm not going to take part in every event. Number 8, a good reason not to read is because you want to bail on a buddy read. This sounds funny. There are so many times that when we buddy read, we don't want to bail. We want it to be a successful buddy read. We don't want to DNF a book that we're reading with a buddy. Who wants to do that? Nobody. But if you hate the book, don't finish it. Don't read it just because it's for a buddy read. Your buddy will understand. I have done this so many times, and every single buddy has understood and has been totally fine with it. Maybe some of them haven't, but they haven't said anything to me, to my face, behind my back, maybe. But nobody has told me they're mad at me or that they can't understand why I'm quitting this book. It's okay not to read when you're in a buddy read and you don't like the book. That's okay. And everybody understands that every book is not for everybody. Number 9 is similar. A great reason not to read is because you hate the book. There are so many people that don't want to DNF. I know so many in my real life that finish everything they start. And for me, that's unrealistic because I hate reading a book that I hate. There are exceptions. There are books that I've hated so blindly, white hot hatred of a book. I've hated that badly that I've read it because I wanted to read it because I wanted to talk about how much I hated it. Those can be fun, but in a regular stream of events, if you're not liking a book, it's not worth your time. I just DNF'd a book today, which is Tuesday. And this is a group read book that I was reading for the band book club, but I DNF'd Oryx and Crake by Margaret Atwood. This is not for me. And I will tell you why in my weekend video, my Bookish Week video. I don't want to devote my mental energy or my time to a book I hate. I don't want to read it. It's a great reason not to read because I'm DNFing it. Number 10, one of the best reasons not to read, because you don't feel like it. It's as simple as that. Don't read if you don't feel like it. Don't read because you think you're supposed to. Don't read and pressure yourself to read because everybody else is reading. What am I going to have to talk about in my video at the end of the week? I talked about this in my last Bookish Week video. I didn't finish anything. I read, but I didn't read every day. And I'm reading some freaking long books. I'm not going to finish everything. Oh well, so what? I didn't feel like it. That's okay. That's a great reason not to read. It's really okay. And even if your week goes by, or your 2 weeks goes by, or a month goes by, and you don't feel like reading, it's still okay. Because as I said in my last video, there's plenty of bookish things to talk about. I don't have to talk about everything I finished. If I don't finish a book for a month, if I don't finish anything in a month, I'll still have plenty of bookish stuff to talk about. If you know me, you know. So those are my 10 reasons why not to read. Let me know in the comments below what you think. Let me know if any of these struck you right in your gut. Let me know. And I love it when you write me a comment. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all in the next video. Bye, everybody. Now I have to go clean up the mess from the cat.